Good day everyone. So now we'll be tackling about feminism theory and how to critique feminism theory. So are you ready? So now let's start. Feminism, it studies literature from women's perspectives that focusing on their experiences, roles and rights. It means that looking at stories through the eyes of women to see how they will feel and what they go through, that focuses on specific lives and their jobs in society and the rights that they have. Second bullet, it examines patriarchy, gender inequality, and how society oppresses or limits women. It looks at how society often set up to give men more power than women, because it studies the ways that this is an unfair system that can hold women badly or treat them poorly. The third bullet is aims to challenge stereotypes that highlighted women's voices and promote equality in literature and culture. It in this bullet, it focuses, or this goal is to stop using the old unfair ideas about how women should act and instead to make women's voices heard and make sure everyone is treated fairly and equally. There are 5 types of feminism. First is the liberal feminism. It seeks gender equality through laws and reforms. This type of feminism believes that the best way to get equality is by changing the rules and laws. They also focuses on making sure that women have the same chances as men in work and at school, because their main goal is for everyone to be treated equally under the same law. The second is the radical feminism. It says patriarchy is the main cause of women's oppression, because radical feminism thinks that the biggest problem is a system called patriarchy, where men hold most power rather than women, because they believe that this kind of system is built into how society works, not just in laws. Because of this feminism, they want to completely change how society is organized to stop the male dominance. And the third types of feminism is socialist or Marxist feminism. Says capitalism exploits women's labor. This group or types of feminism believes the money systems, like capitalism, are what truly hurt women the most, because they argue that women's work only at home and in jobs is often used to make others rich without paying them fairly. To fix these things, or this kind of feminism, they want to change the economy so that it doesn't take advantage of the workers or the women. So the fourth types of feminism is the intersectional feminism. It studies how sexism connects with racism, class, and other oppression. This type of feminism looks like at how different problems like racism, class, and other oppression, and it teaches that a person's life is shaped by many things at once, like their race, money, and gender. Because this type of feminism, their goal is to make sure everyone is included and that they will fix all kinds of unfairness together. Because before, it is famous that the intersectional feminism, which is mostly the racism, as type of feminism is cultural feminism. It values feminine traits like care and nurturing, because this type of feminism, it focuses on the special strengths and qualities that are often linked to women, because it says that things like being caring and nurturing are very important and should be respected by everyone, because instead of trying to be just like men, it celebrates what makes feminism traits unique and available. So now, let's proceed to the waves of feminism. There are 4 waves of feminism. First is the first wave feminism. It happened in late 1800s to early 1900s. It focused on basic legal rights, especially women's right to vote. This early movement was all about getting basic legal rights for women. Its main goal was winning the right to vote so women could have a say in the government or in public, because they also fought for the right to own property and to be treated as legal citizens. And the second wave feminism happened in 1960s to 1980s. It focused on equality in work, education, and reproductive rights. This period focused on making things fairly in daily life, at work and at home, because women fight for equal pay and the chance to go to the same college as men, because they also pushed for more control over their own bodies and health choices. And the third wave feminism was happened in 1990s to 2000s. It focused on the diversity, identity, and different experiences of women, because third wave feminism started looking at how different women have different life experiences rather than men, because it pointed out that a woman's race, money, or background changes the challenges that the woman faces. Instead of one single goal, it celebrated individuality and many ways to be a woman. And the fourth wave feminism, it was happened in 2010 to present. It focused on online activism and fighting sexual harassment. The fourth wave feminism, it is a modern movement that uses social media and internet to speak out against unfair treatment. A big focus on this is putting an end to harassment and making sure that women feel safe in public and at work or even in school, because it uses hashtags and online stories to bring people together for change. Here are the most famous authors during the feminism theory. First is Simone de Beauvoir. He is a French philosopher and a writer. His famous artwork was The Second Sex in 1949. And also he says that women are treated as the other. And he said that society shapes women's roles and identity. The second author or famous writer during feminism theory is Judith Butler. She is an American philosopher and a writer. She is known for her work Gender Trouble in 1990, and she said that gender is a social performance, not a fixed identity. She says also that societal norms shapes what is considered male or female. The third and last famous name or writer during the feminism theory, she is Mary Wollstonecraft. She is the mother of feminism, a vindication of the rights of women in 1792, and she said that women are not naturally inferior to men, but only appear so because they lack education. So now we already know the definition of feminism, the types of feminism, the famous authors or writers during the feminism theory. We will now critique the story The Awakening by Kate Chopin. The summary of The Awakening by Kate Chopin. Edna Pontellier, a young wife and mother vacationing on Grand Isle, Louisiana. She grows unhappy with her wealthy husband Leonce and her daily life. And then she met Robert Lebron, sparks feelings of her freedom, and she learns how to swim alone for the very first time. Influenced by her friends like the perfect mother Adele Rotignole and the lone pianist Madimol Rez, Edna starts to change. She ignores her duties back in New Orleans, paints, sells her art, and begins to have an affair with Alce Aropin. Robert leaves for Mexico, but she moves to her own small pigeon house for independence. Edna's bold choices shock her husband and society. She hosts casual gatherings and rejects the old rules, but feels pulled by love for Robert and her sons. When Robert returns from his work, he pulls away from her, saying he cannot shame her marriage. Heartbroken after seeing Adele suffer in childbirth, Edna goes back to Grand Isle. She swims far into the sea, letting the waves take her. Her death stands for her final grasp at true freedom from limits on women. We already know the summary of the story of The Awakening by Kate Chapin. We'll now know how to critique the feminism theory. First is the self versus duty. I have an excerpt here. I would give up the unessential. I would give my money. I would give up my life for my children, but I wouldn't give myself. Edna really adores her children, but she refused to being a mom for her entire life because she holds onto her personal ideas, the desire that she really wanted, and the independence that she's been really longing for. She's pursuing her own passion and thinking freely rather than sacrificing herself to be an ideal mother who only lives for her kids. It ties into feminism because it challenges the old school expectation where it was famous before that women should erase themselves from their family because late during the early feminist, when this book was written in the late 1800s, a lot of people argued that women should have their own rights to selfhood, not just being a wife or a mother. That is why Edna embodies the individualism that prioritizing her inner world over a total sacrifice. It is like she is saying that I can love my kids deeply, but it should be myself first. The feminism approach, liberal feminism stresses individual rights over forced rules. Edna rejects the patriarchal view that mothers must erase their identity for their family. That is why she's claiming her selfhood as a basic right. Second is claiming autonomy. The excerpt is, but whatever came, she had resolved never again to belong to another than herself. Edna rejects the idea that her husband or any man owns her body, life, and choices, just like she's just a property in the marriage. That is why she vows to herself to live on her own terms, making her own decision without controlling or approval of any man. This activates or screams the early feminist rebellion against the coverture laws and norms, where married women legally became their husband's property, because in 1800s this was common. The author Kate Chapins highlighted this story, the first wave feminism, because it pushes for women as an autonomous individual with their rights to their own life, body, and happiness, not an extension to any of men. That is why the feminism approach is that it embodies the existential feminism that women aren't born to serve men but must define their own existence. That is why Edna breaks from being her husband's property, asserting personal sovereignty. Third is eternal rights. The excerpt is, she's got some sort of notion in her head concerning the eternal rights of women. That is why Edna's believe that women deserve the same basic right as men, like controlling their own money, bodies, or futures that comes off as crazy or wild to folks around her. That is why they expect, or in this era, they expect that wives and moms to blindly obey their husbands and putting their family first without asking any question. Because in feminism terms, this is the first way. That's why in the feminism era, it nails the first wave fights in 1890s era for legal equality like suffrage and property rights. That's why Edna embodies the threat to separate spheres, because men has more public power rather than women, because women should obediently stay home to do house chores and obey their husbands. That's why the feminism approach is that echoes the liberal feminism's call for equality, that women deserve the same freedoms as men. Her notion defines the Victorian norms that confined wives to obedience, marking her as a new woman. And lastly is the sensual awakening. The excerpt is, the voice of the sea speaks to the soul. The touch of the sea is sensuous, enfolding the body in its soft, close embrace. That is why the ocean stirs deep, buried sensations of joy, sensuality, and longing in Edna, that letting her experience her body and spirit without the chains of marital duties of society's proper rules for wives. Because it describes, this is the pure feminist symbolism, the sea as a vast, untamed space for female self-discovery and erotic awakening, free from patriarchal control, that in Chapin's era, women were expected to suppress desires for anything beyond dutiful sex or motherhood feminism, especially it came the second wave later on. That is why it celebrates the reclaiming the body as one's own, not a husband's tool. Because that is why Edna swims, because it represents from breaking the angel in the house, that ideally embracing the pleasure as a radical act of autonomy. Because the sea stirs up as Edna's secret feelings of joy, passion, and wanting more from life. In the feminism approach, it challenges the patriarchal control of female sexuality, that feminism separates desire from marriage or motherhood. The sea symbolizes reclaiming boldly autonomy defined by 19th century moral codes. And that would be all. Thank you.